Hello and welcome to the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators of Nigeria ICSAN podcast series. This is series 007, and I have with me, I'm most honored to have with me a very distinguished speaker, Dr. Waheed Olagunju, ACIS, FCIB, FCIOD. You're very welcome, sir.
Thank you, it's my pleasure.
Thank you for joining us. And our topic for today is the role of governance in the creative and media sector. For the ICSAN members that are watching us, you understand why we have Dr. Olagunju here. He had a very phenomenal session with the media sector sectorial group. Thank you and congratulations for that as well.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Olagunju is a former acting managing director, chief executive officer, and former executive director of the Bank of Industry. During his 29-year banking career that spanned between 1990 and 2019, he headed 3 different departments and 2 directorates that included operating as the bank's longest-serving company secretary for 16 years, and concurrently as the general manager, strategic planning, corporate secretariat, and corporate communications for 6 years, and subsequently as an executive director for 6 years. During this period, he worked diligently with 6 managing director, chief executive officers of the Nigerian Industrial and Development Bank and the Bank of Industry, with also several board chairmen and directors, as well as supervising ministers. Dr. Olagunju, who began his banking profession with BIO's Prosecure institution, the Nigerian Industrial Development Bank, in August 1990, as a senior manager, rose to the position of executive director, business development in the year 2012. He was reassigned as executive director, small and medium enterprise in 2014. Dr. Olagunju, as the most senior professional staff, held for twice as acting managing director and chief executive officer of the bank between the months of April and May 2014, as well as between the months of February 2016 and May 2017, pending the engagement of politically appointed substantive MDs by the federal government. Under his leadership of the SME Directorate, Dr. Olagunju, in an extraordinary way, grew the Bank of Industry's annual lending to SMEs by almost 1,500% over a period of 4 years, from a yearly average of 1.8 billion prior to 2014, when he was appointed, to a historical annual average of 7.75 billion. This resulted in a cumulative disbursement of 28.3 billion between 2014 and 2018. Also, under his watch as acting managing director between the years of 2016 and 2017, the Bank of Industry recorded remarkable improvements and culminated in BIO's rating by international and domestic rating agencies being upgraded and affirmed by 2016. While heading BIO, Dr. Olagunju ensured that the bank's development impact was felt all over the country, while beneficiaries of the institute's loans and technical assistance were drawn from all strata of the Nigerian economy. Dr. Olagunju led BIO support for several development initiatives undertaken by the national and subnational governments, as well as many community-driven programs. These included helping to launch the SME clinical series held in states led by the then Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Empower scheme that had 100,000 beneficiaries, the Kaduna State Government's CAD Step, as well as the youth empowerment programs initiated by the Oni of Ife and the Sultan of Sokoto. Dr. Olagunju is one of Nigeria's leading development practitioners and scholars, and he bagged a Bachelor of Arts and Master of Social Science degrees from the University of Lagos, as well as a doctorate degree in business administration from the Paris School of Business. He obtained a professional certificate in investment appraisal and risk analysis from the Queen's University, Canada, and a certificate in executive development from Walton School, University of Pennsylvania, United States of America. Prior to joining NIDB in August 1990, Dr. Olagunju had an illustrious career with the Network News Directorate of the Nigerian Television Authority between the years of 1981 and 1990. After his almost 40-year twin-track careers in broadcasting and banking, during which he gained considerable domestic and international exposure, Dr. Olagunju floated WVL Development Advisors Limited in 2019 to enable him to continue deploying his vast experience, knowledge, skills, and expertise to leaders of national and subnational governments across Africa, private sector captains, as well as the international development community. In this regard, Dr. Olagunju was in June 2020 appointed head of the subcommittee on specialized financial institutions of the Technical Working Group on Financial Sector and Capital Markets that produced Nigeria's medium-term National Development Plan between 2021 to 2025, which is a component of Nigeria's 30-year National Development Plan 2020 to 2015, Agenda 2050. I beg your pardon, that's 2015. Dr. Olagunju was conferred with the fellowships of numerous professional bodies, which included the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria and the Chartered Institute of Directors, which are the highest recognition in these two institutes. These honors are in recognition of his remarkable contributions in Nigeria's banking sector, Nigeria's industrial development, corporate governance in Nigeria, national development in general, as well as his high integrity and strict adherence to ethical practices. It was also on this account and his numerous achievements and contributions that Dr. Olagunju has been conferred with a number of chieftaincy titles, and one of them, I hope I pronounce it well, is the Are Bobagunwa of Offa in Kwara State. He is also the chairman of the Offa Economic Development Committee and the vice president of Offa Metropolitan Club. I had to just summarize this or else we won't leave here today. Very well done, Dr. Olagunju. You have the experience, and like I said to you earlier on, what is interesting is that you have worked in various sectors that appear unconnected, but I'm sure somehow has made the Dr. Olagunju that we have with us today. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your generous compliments and remarks.
Thank you, sir. So we're looking at the role of corporate governance in creative in the media sector. Can I just ask you, when we say creative and media sector, what's the scope? What are we talking about exactly?
Well, essentially, we're talking about institutions and individuals who operate in the media, which is easier to define. We're talking about organizations that are involved with gathering, processing, and disseminating information, right? They could be entertaining, they could be educative, they could be enlightening, because in the media you have journalists who handle news, and also in the media you have those who do entertainment, the musicals, the drama, the feature, right? And they disseminate through the conventional mainstream media, as in print media, as in television, as in radio. But now we're not talking of media convergence, because all the demarcations are now blurred. Because even newspapers that are regarded as print, they have electronic version.
Absolutely.
As well.
Yeah.
The advent of internet has made a lot of things possible. And then you also have Twitter, you have LinkedIn, digital media, all right? And you also have those who call citizen journalists, because everybody with a mobile phone now goes anywhere, records information, and begins to disseminate, right? So, that's how to define those in the media sector loosely. And then in the creative sector, they are mainly in the entertainment, musical, drama, and some other activities in that area. Those who produce films as well, Nollywood mainly, and then those in the music, basically music and arts and other activities that can be regarded as creative Some even extend creative to include fashion as well. So it depends on how you want to define the two of them.
And dance, can you include?
Of course, dancing, of course, choreography.
Yeah.
I put that under music, right?
Okay.
So those who dance and a lot of them, right?
Okay.
Spoken word artists,
Okay.
also in the creative industry, also in events planning.
Okay.
Those who direct events, those who are MCs, masters of ceremonies, right? So they're also under the creative economy. So it's very, very expansive and extensive.
Yeah.
So we're trying to bring them, we're trying to formalize them. That's what we're trying to do at in the group of ICSAN.
Okay.
So I can have them organized. I'll introduce some governance into them because right now they don't seem to have a structure. So we're trying to see how we can help them to put a structure in place. But when they are better organized, when they are better governed, when the tendency to grow much higher, and they're able to access a lot of opportunities that were hitherto not being able to access because of their loose way we operate now.
Yeah, so you're just taking me to my next question. I was going to ask, do you think these sectors, as you have just said, that this creative, the media, and everything that comes under them, do you think it's necessary to have some kind of policy directly, I would like to say guiding or supervising their activities? Like you had said, to give it some kind of governance framework. Do you think it's necessary? And if you do, maybe you could just talk a little bit more about why.
Yes, we have a creative policy for the creative media industry, and it helps because governments provide enabling environment for businesses to thrive, and we regard them as businesses as well. When you have the policy in place, it gives you, at times, so the policy could have legal backing as well, right? And when it has a policy and has legal backing, it helps in ensuring that they are structured. And when they are structured, they are better organized. They will to realize their potentials. And those who want to assist them will be able to assist them. For example, funding is a major barrier that they have because when they're not organized, when they're not structured, investors are usually wary of dealing with potential customers who come from such unorganized, unregulated sectors because the risks are not easy to dimension. And lenders and investors, even equity investors, want to know the risks associated. How can the risks be removed? If they can be completely eliminated, how can they be mitigated? What role can government play in sharing the risks? Potential, what framework can be put in place? Because at times in some other clients, you have governments putting in place credit guarantee schemes that enables credit guarantee. That enables the government and other parties to share the risks for funding or granting credit to potential beneficiaries in certain sectors. So in the particular case of the creative media industry that are perceived to be highly risky, so policies will usually help, and governments will also come up with incentives that would tend to de-risk the sector to a reasonable extent. So, and from time to time, such policies will also be reviewed because, like people say, innovation will always be ahead of regulation. Right. So it's very, very important to tweak them from time to time to ensure that you have an eye on them. Because when the policy is in place, it also introduces incentives that government can grant, and foreign development partners are usually attracted when there's a policy indicating the role of the various facilitators of the development process. And those who facilitate the development process mainly are governments, be it national or transnational, or subnational governments. Right? They help a lot. The private sector, formal and informal. Let's try and formalize as much as possible those who are not in the formal sector because it helps. According to PwC, more than 60% of the Nigerian economy falls within the informal space. So the more formal operators we have, the better. Then you have our development partners. They also facilitate development. And then we have community-based organizations. Because we can't live with the government nowadays. So communities need to help civil society organizations, NGOs that are development focused. So that's the route for us to go. To ensure that all the facilitators work hand in hand and it helps.
Okay. I'm just thinking of my head now. Looking at other African countries, do you think they've gone ahead of us in terms of formalizing this creative and media sector, or are we still, ahead in any way?
Well, we believe we are the largest in Africa, and by some estimates, we rank among the top 3 in the world. Talking about the creative industry. I mean, if you look at our artists and musicians, they're all over the place. There's hardly any part of the world you go to where you don't have Afrobeats, being played. And most of the Afrobeat musicians, leading Afro musicians today, are Nigerians. They have conquered the world virtually.
And Nollywood too.
Nollywood, yes. I was going to come to that as well. It used to be Nollywood initially, but then the musicians have taken over from Nollywood. Yes, they have taken over from Nollywood. But Nollywood people too, they are doing a great job as well. And they're able to impact on other African countries, even non-African countries, even in the Caribbean. You find Nollywood's movies being watched in countries like Grenada, in Jamaica, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and then other African countries too. You find movies being watched everywhere. And unconsciously, we're able to impact not only the living standards or livelihoods of the people in those countries, but in such areas as architecture. I was shocked when I went to an African country and said, look, the architects draw inspiration from watching Nollywood movies.
Wow.
Yes, because they look at the homes and settings where those films are shot.
Wow, okay.
And they draw inspiration. And these of Nigerian architects too have been invited to come and design structures in other African countries.
Who would have thought?
Exactly.
Wow.
So these are the multiplier effects.
Yeah. Okay.
When I was quite impressed when I heard that in countries like Gambia, to be specific, a lot of Nigerian architects are doing a good job. And Kenya, these are countries that have a lot of diaspora population, high net worth individuals who work with the World Bank, who work with the UN, work with international organizations. They want to put up structures in their countries. They now seek out Nigerian architects.
Because of what they've seen.
What they've seen on Nollywood.
Wow, that's good.
To design their homes for them and even come and excuse
That's good.
the construction of those homes. It also helps furniture too. You know, so these are indirect ways of multiple effects of helping the economy. So comparing us with other countries, I think other countries are perhaps doing better than us in the area of infrastructure, like South Africa. A lot of our artists still go to South Africa for post-production, even to shoot their movies in South Africa. Okay. So that's an area that we need to work on. And then venues too for concerts. We don't have, a lot of our artists complain that we don't have suitable venues that can accommodate them. Burna Boy has said this several times. You know, even Ashake, you know, Davido, all of them, they are all complaining. They all try to compare what we have in Nigeria with O2 Arena, in the UK, and what they have in France, you know, and some other venues, even in South Africa. Okay. So these are gaps that need to be filled in terms of investment. So the market is there. So potential investors should look into these areas to see how we can provide all this infrastructure and facilities so that we can retain the resources we spend outside Nigeria doing post-production and recording all those things. So the potentials are enormous. Nigeria.
That's very interesting. You said something earlier in the beginning of our conversation about individual journalists, everybody using their phones.
Citizen journalists.
And so how do you think, you know, because when we talk about governance, we're talking about accountability, we're talking about integrity. But when these people do this video recording, how, you know, and sometimes it's true, sometimes a lot of fake news is also introduced into the media. So what can we do? What do you advise that can be done to checkmate things like fake news and ensure the integrity of everything that goes out there to the public?
There are two ways, legally and morally. Some laws, I understand, have been put in place now to check fake news and abuse of the media, by mostly the citizen journalists who call it fake news. So legally, that's one angle. Then on the moral side, let's talk to ourselves. Because usually it's better, I believe more in moral suasion. Just like when it comes to countering violence too, there's talk of kinetic and non-kinetic approach. What the soldiers will tell you is that ultimately the non-kinetic approach that can help. I had somebody saying, look, if you shoot 2,000 terrorists today, tomorrow 4,000 will come out.
Sure.
You continue shooting.
True.
But it's better you appeal to the people. Let's have non-kinetic solutions. Let's have political solutions. Let's engage with our society members to say that they can fall in line. So that now speaks also to our values, because most of these things are also value-driven. If you are a value-driven society where people are ethical and they embrace a lot of values, most of these abuses will not be committed.
Absolutely.
Yeah. No human society is perfect. You need to come to reducing and mitigating some of these tendencies.
Okay. Yeah, I agree with you to a large extent. You said that there are two ways, the moral and the law.
Legal, yeah. Correct.
So the legal, does that have anything to do with the anti-social media bill?
Correct. That's what I was referring to.
Okay. So could you just talk to us a little bit more about
Yes,
that?
because you still have to now enforce the bill. How many courts do we have? How many policemen do we have? In a population of more than 200 million. We are still thinking of how to use the police we have to check crimes, especially violent crimes. You now start dissipating energy, now running after those in the social media area. Then you go to courts. The courts are even already congested. How many courts do you want to build? How many lawyers do you want to train? So it's usually best to use like some countries, the prison population is very low in some countries.
Yes.
Particularly in some Nordic countries.
Yes.
So crime rate is very low in those countries. And there is a correlation between the quality of life as depicted by, for example, such indices as per capita income. In most of these Nordic countries, their per capita income are in double digits of thousands. $10,000, $20,000, $40,000 in terms of per capita income. So where the living standards are very high, tendency to go into crime is usually low. And when crime rate is low, cases are usually virtually non-existent, and prisons are empty as well. So it's just like saying, let's have more policemen, let's have more prisons to accommodate criminals. But it's usually better to persuade our people,
to stay away. Because even the cost attached to more policemen and more prisons.
Instead of spending those money on health and education and housing, now start spending them on prostitution and then maintaining the correctional centers. So it's go back to our values. I would strongly advocate that we promote and propagate strong values, and that also goes back to the family upbringing of the homes. What kind of children are we bringing up? We need to pay a lot of attention to how we bring up our children, how we raise our children. Also look at the demography today. We have a youthful demographic structure, youth bulge. We have more youths today. They account for more than 70%, 60% of our population. Those who fall below 30 and below.
Oh God, I thought I was going to be a youth.
30 and below, so they account for a substantial portion of our population. And they're the one you find on the social media.
Yes.
They spend more than 20 hours out of 24 hours on social media every day. They are the ones. So, and they come from homes. So let's try and see how we can come up with children that are very well brought up.
So we don't have to spend so much energy with laws and implementation and.
So family values is very, very important. Because society values usually come from family values. It's from homes that inculcate those values in our children.
Well, do you agree with me that the the Nollywood and the television also play a role to how these children are being brought up?
Oh yes, that is true. I know that a lot of work is being done to ensure that we use the industry content positively.
Okay.
The various codes advocate positive use of the various medium of entertainment and education and enlightenment. We can use them to uphold and promote our values.
Okay.
You know, the Nigerian Press Council Code, says this. The Nigerian Broadcasting Code also advocates this as well. So I'm sure most of the laws.
How many of us don't even know about this code?
Well, that's something we need to do. Government needs to work more in this area, and then those of us who are not government too, like ICSAN. We are non-governmental, but we promote good governance and good practices. Yeah. So this podcast, another medium of helping our people, advocating the adoption of good practices, and letting our people to know more about the existence of this code. Because you need to know more about them. Because in some local climes, they say there can be no crime if there is no law. So let's be aware of those laws, of those guidelines, of those codes, so that there will be deterrence for violations. So that's very true. We need to do a lot to educate our people and enlighten our people.
On the code.
Right, yeah.
Okay, so what will you, or let's say, how will you rate the intellectual property laws in Nigeria?
That's an area where we are suffering a lot. The IPs. The Nigerian Copyright Commission is working very, very hard to ensure that intellectual property is promoted. Because that's the capital they have, that's the strength they have, those in the creative industry. Yeah. So we need to work extremely hard to ensure that we protect intellectual property, to ensure that there are consequences, very, very stern consequences for violators. Because it's really not easy for people to use their creativity, right, to come up with stuff.
And it's just taking over.
And they're taking over like that, So that's very, very painful. And it can also lead to diminution of the industry and make our people less interested, demoralize them. I was looking for the right word. Can be demoralizing.
So what advice will you give, what guide will you give the Copyright Commission as to go about what needs to be done?
Well, going back to legality or moral solution.
Yeah. Okay.
Copyright Commission is there to enforce the laws, to make sure that those who violate the laws, those aberrant behaviors are brought to book. But it's still best to talk to our people to avoid those tendencies. Because really, how much of Nigeria can the Copyright Commission cover? We're a very big country. Sure. And also now with technology, we're borderless. With internet, people can transmit outside the country, right? A lot. They are doing so every day. So it's best to still use moral solution as much as possible.
All right, thank you. So when we talk about media content and leadership, do you think it's an inclusive, is it inclusive? Do you have everybody in there, or is it a select few that are opportune to work in the space of developing content and maybe owning media houses? What do you think?
Well, you're talking of democratization of perhaps the industry. There are a lot of people gravitating into that industry, particularly our youth. So we need to ensure that their energies are positively channeled, constructively, to ensure that whatever they do there, the spaces they operate, the tendencies are positive, and they do less of negative things. And then let's reward those positive behaviors as we are carrot and stick approach, as we are sanctioning those who violate, those who come up with aberrant behaviors. Let us make sure that we incentivize those who do well, so that they can serve as role models for others to emulate. And then the violators will also serve as a deterrent. We will sanction the violators. That would ensure that we deter other people from going astray.
Okay, so how much do you think our media, in all ramifications, has affected our culture as Nigerians?
Unfortunately and regrettably, the abuse of the media, the misuse of the media has impacted negatively on our culture. Because of the globalized world, particularly young people, they have access to happening in other parts of the world, and the way they transmit and disseminate them can be very, very negative. So we need to appeal to ourselves to make sure that we do things that will enforce our
identity, yes,
and our identity and our culture. And we are quite rich in this area. You saw the recent awards conducted by Africa Magic.
Yeah.
You saw our people very, very creative. They were very, very rich in culture, and there's a lot we can do in that area.
Yeah. Okay, so how do you think governance can, I know we've talked about the policy framework, but how do you think, apart from policies, how do you think the principles of corporate governance can also benefit the young people in media, and how do we communicate it to them? And what do you think is the benefit of it to them?
I think it's best we convince and persuade them that it is in their own enlightened self-interests if they adopt good governance practices. Many of them don't, unfortunately, but they're equipped to be able to do so. Many of them are educated, right? And which makes it easier for us to let them know that, look, this is the way to go. These are the things you need to do. Put proper corporate governance structures in place. During the last outing we had, the Institute's leadership was able to say, look, we're ready to work with you. Any one of you who needs support, please reach out to us. We will support you. So those are some of the responsibilities of the services of ICSAN in order to help them embrace best practices in terms of corporate governance, whatever they do.
I hope I'm not asking too much. Can you share an example of how corporate governance has impacted your own career, perhaps if they are watching, to hear directly some of the benefits of applying these principles?
Well, I will start from my own personal values, right? I want to believe that I hold very strong values, and as such, I imbibe from business society values and tendencies that reinforce my own beliefs. That's where it starts from, So I also religious upbringing, justice as well. There are so many tendencies out there in the world. There are so many alternatives. The righteous way and the negative way. So it depends on what you want to adopt. So in my own case, I adopt most cases righteous things that reinforce my own positive values. And I avoid things that are negative, right? That are also repugnant to my faith and my values. So that has actually helped me. And I try to get educated. I educate myself a lot. I'm a Muslim, and I studied Islamic studies up to A-level, which meant I could have gone to university to study Islamic studies, right? But so, in other words, I know a lot about the teachings, right, of Islam, and I try to adhere to those teachings. I'm also very well read when it comes to cultures of other countries and other societies. I'm a student of history as well, so I know things that so I know the success factors that have helped people to achieve successes, as well as groups individuals and nations. And I know factors that have led to the failure of individuals, groups, societies, and corporate organizations as well. So in my own case, I try to ensure that whatever responsibility I'm given, I apply my very best to ensure that I discharge those responsibilities diligently and faithfully, in line with the values of the institutions that I've worked with, in line with the purpose for which those institutions were established. And I've always been conscious of the potential contributions of those institutions to national development. I know that whenever we work hard, we'll be contributing. As the organization is succeeding, we're also contributing, also making our contribution to the development of our country. I'm a development-focused person. So when I was a journalist, development journalism was my own approach. I belong to the school of thought that believes strongly that we need to use communication for development purposes. Without communication, there cannot be development. Right? And equally too, I joined NIDV, which later got transformed into Bank of Interest, which is also a development finance institution. So I've been a development practitioner all my life, either as a development journalist or as a development banker. Okay. So national interest, doing things for societal good has always been my focus. Okay. Right.
And it has done well, because looking at looking at your career so far.
Well, thank you very much for that. We thank God. Thank God as well.
Just curiously, and I'm coming to the end of the interview, is you worked with the Nigerian Television Authority for over a decade. Many years ago.
Almost a decade.
Yes. Okay, almost a decade.
Yeah, 9 years. Precisely.
Now, so as an elder now, looking back at how the TV was, how it was run, and how it is run today, have we grown or have we taken some steps back?
In many respects, we have grown. Okay. But regrettably, in some areas, we've lost ground. In terms of viewership, we've grown. In terms of content, we've also grown. But the quality of content is where we think we need to improve on. Today, when you see some on-air personalities, you can easily tell that they've not been trained. So we need to invest a lot more in training. Because while we were growing up, those on-air personalities serve as role models for us.
Yes.
They inspired us. They inspired us.
Yes.
They motivated us. I mean, John Chairman, late John Chairman, was one of my motivators, right? Mike Ahuru, Joe Ebua, James Audu, Elijah Sakapabo, they inspired me. And these are people who are also well trained, many of them by BBC. Many of them were very well trained within and outside Nigeria.
Oh, okay.
And so they inspired us. Many of them were my mentors, and they also adopted me as their mentees, right? And we didn't think at that time that we knew everything. We looked up to them for direction and for guidance, and we took those corrections. We appreciated those guidance a lot. Because when I was working in NTA, for example, the car park, as you drive into the NTA, you turn left, the car park is on the left, and the buildings are on the right. So as you're parking your car, you are mindful of how the DG or any management staff also driving by, lowering the glass. Say, oh, Waheed, I saw your program last night, I saw your report last night, it was good, but these are a few errors here and there. I think you need to improve on them. Or they say, come and see my office. So we're always conscious that our bosses and our mentors were watching us. So whatever we did in those days, we are conscious to make sure that we make minimum mistakes. To the barest minimum. And where we're not sure, we asked. But nowadays, most of them believe they know everything. Even if you try to correct them, they say, no. I mean, out there in the social media, I'm worshipped. So who are you to start correcting me? For those who are worshiping you outside there, I informed that day. Many of them are ignorant. Just a blind man trying to lead the way.
Blind man.
You know, he's trying to lead other blind men. You know, so our people should humble themselves. I will call for absolute humility. Let them humble themselves and let them pursue knowledge. Many are ignorant. But if you are a media practitioner, you have the opportunity of reaching millions through your performance and through the service that you render. It's important that you are impeccably factual, accurate, truthful, impartial, unbiased, and make sure that whatever you do, you impact positively in your society.
Thank you very much. Lastly, as the chairman of the ICSAN Creative and Media Secretariat Group, we've talked about the program you had recently, very well attended, very robust, and very insightful.
Thank you.
What are your plans to further entrench governance into the sector?
We want to thank you for your kind compliments. It's true we had a good outing. There are a lot of recommendations. It was interactive. So what we're trying to do now is to put together those recommendations and see how we can implement those recommendations, working with the practitioners in industry and development partners. Those who can facilitate development in government, either the national or sub-national levels, the private sector, our international development partners, as well as the domestic development partners, and then community-based organizations. So see how we can work together in having them effectively implemented.
Thank you very much for spending some time with us today, Dr. Waheed Olagunju, ACIS, FCIB, and FCIOD. It has been, I'm just going to have to cut it short, but it has been a wonderful session. Any last words before we wrap up, or just like advice you would like to give to those listening to us within and outside ICSAN?
Wherever we are, let's just continue to do our best to make sure that we propel this country to the promised land. As far as I'm concerned, not many countries are better blessed than Nigeria. Nigeria is a beautiful country. I had the privilege and opportunity of traveling to more than 45 countries in my broadcast career, as well as in my days as a development practitioner. So I'm able to, as a development banker, so I'm able to make comparisons. This is a very well-blessed country. Let's make sure that we get to the promised land in our lifetime, and it's possible. If we are well focused, in 10 years, we can make a lot of difference, as we did in some spaces. Look at the telecom sector. It's highly underreported, the progress that we've made in the telecom sector. No country in the world has made the kind of success that we have made, has made the kind of progress that we have made in telecom. They don't have the market. We have the market. From the perspective of market alone, we have competitive advantage in those areas. And I'm glad that our youth are making a lot of progress in ICT sector, in fintech sector, that's riding on the back of this infrastructure provided by the progress that is made in the telecom sector. By some projections, I understand the sector might contribute about 21% of our GDP. And the fintech and the finance sector are riding on this. So a huge success that we made in banking. The Nigerian banking industry is one of the most sophisticated in the world as well. I'm able to say so authority. We've done very well in the area of ICT, we've done very well in the area of banking. Gonna do this while we used to import cement. We've now become self-sufficient in cement production. And most of these things were facilitated by private investment. But government provided the enabling environment. The cement policy was put in place in 2002, which Aliko Dangote and Co. leveraged. President Obasanjo deregulated the telecom sector, right? Also, that's why the MTNs and all the Airtels, all of them came in into sector. Then the fintech, the banking revolution also took place when President Obasanjo was the reforms that were put in place. Soludo, when he was central bank governor, a lot of reforms were put in place, and that's what has helped in driving for example, the FSS 2020, the Financial System Stability that was put in place to drive the Vision 2020. So we can do a lot more in other sectors, replicate this in other sectors. We're able to replicate this in other sectors. Nigeria will become a middle income country before we know it, having per capita income of 20, 30,000, provided to keep our population growth under check and ensure that we increase productivity.
Thank you so much. Thank you for joining us. On behalf of the President and Chairman of the Governing Council, Mrs. Fumi Ekuna FCS, the entire Governing Council, and members of the Institute, we appreciate your selfless service. You worked with us to train our media practitioners earlier on, and then you're also doing this podcast, and then you're chairing the creative and the media sectorial group. Thank you so much for all you do for the Institute, and we look forward to keeping the conversation going as your sectorial group paths the way for the governance structure for the creative and media sector.
An honor and pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, sir. So it has been a very, very interesting and insightful session with Dr. Waheed Olagunju, ACIS, FCIB, and FCIOD. And this has been the Institute of Chartered Secretaries and Administrators podcast series 007. Thank you for joining us. My name is IKeja. I have been your host, and I'll see you again at the next session. Thank you.